She asked me to stay, but not alone. That night was supposed to be ordinary. Movie night, a few drinks, and laughter that stretched too far past midnight. I remember the low hum of the TV, the scent of vanilla candles she always lit after dinner, and the way her eyes lingered on me just a little too long when her husband wasn't looking. We'd known each other for years. Our friend group was tight. Her and her husband, Ben, were always the perfect couple everyone admired. I used to believe it too, until that night. Ben had fallen asleep on the couch, his arm draped carelessly over the remote. His chest rose and fell with the kind of deep, wine-heavy sleep only someone truly comfortable could manage. She stood near the kitchen, pouring another glass of red. I joined her without thinking, brushing past her arm just close enough to feel her warmth. "You should stay," she said softly, not meeting my eyes. "But not alone." I blinked. My heart did that strange stutter step that happens when desire creeps in where it shouldn't. She looked up then, and her eyes, calm, steady, told me this wasn't a joke. She wasn't drunk. She meant it. Everything slowed. The silence between us became its own language. Her lips parted, just barely. My gaze dropped, to her collarbone, to the way the strap of her top had slipped off one shoulder. She didn't fix it. "I've thought about this," she whispered, setting the glass down. "More than I should." My throat was dry. My pulse was loud in my ears. I didn't move, not yet. "Ben," I said, barely recognizing my own voice. "He's right there." "I know." Her hand brushed mine, fingers tracing a path that felt too deliberate to be innocent. There was a charge, a tension I couldn't unfeel. Then she leaned in, and just before her lips touched mine, I heard something. A breath, sharp, sudden, behind us. Ben wasn't asleep anymore. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Not after what almost happened. Not after the way Ben's eyes locked with mine across the room. Not angry, not shocked, just knowing. But before I tell you what happened next, I need to go back. Because none of this started that night. Not really. It began months earlier, when I helped them move into their new place. We were unpacking boxes, sweaty, tired, laughing over pizza and cheap beer. She was wearing cut-off shorts and a faded college tee, barefoot on the hardwood floors, dancing around as she unwrapped glassware. Ben was in the backyard messing with the grill. It was nothing, completely innocent. But something about the way she looked at me that day stuck. It was subtle. Her eyes lingered when I handed her a plate. Her laugh came a little easier when I said something dumb. At one point, I caught her watching me from the hallway mirror, pretending to fluff her hair while she studied me with this unreadable expression. That night, when I got home, I kept replaying it all in my head. I told myself it was nothing. A crush, maybe. One-sided. Harmless. But it didn't go away. Over the weeks, it built. In glances, in playful teasing, in the way she'd sit a little closer than necessary when we were all on the couch. Ben never noticed. Or maybe he did and chose not to see it. She and I never talked about it, but it was always there, hanging in the air like a question neither of us wanted to answer. Until that night. The night she asked me to stay. And now, after that breath behind us, that sharp inhale from the couch, everything had changed. I turned slowly. Ben was sitting up, eyes open. No words, just silence. She didn't flinch, didn't retreat. Her fingers stayed where they were, just barely grazing mine. I expected anger, shouting, accusation. But Ben only said one thing. "So, are you finally going to tell him?" My stomach dropped. Her hand slipped away from mine. She turned to him, her face unreadable. "Tell me what?" I asked, but I already knew this wasn't going to be something I could forget in the morning. The real secret hadn't been the kiss we almost shared. It was what came next. Her silence was the loudest sound in the room. Ben leaned forward, elbows on his knees, watching her, not me, like he was waiting for her to decide what story to tell. I stood there, caught between them, my heart rattling inside my chest like it wanted out. She finally spoke. Quiet. Careful. "We've talked about this before. Ben and I." "Talked about what?" She turned to me, her eyes soft, almost apologetic. "About you. About this pull I've felt." Ben gave a small, humorless laugh. "She's not wrong. We've known for a while. Hell, I've seen it since that first weekend you helped us move in. I just didn't think it would go this far." I couldn't breathe right. My mind spun, searching for something solid. "So you what?" I asked. "You've both just been watching this happen?" She stepped closer, just slightly. Enough to make my skin hum. We didn't plan it, she said. But it became real. For me. Ben stood then. And for a second, I thought he might hit me. But he didn't. He looked between us, jaw tense, then exhaled through his nose. I'm not stupid. I see how she looks at you. I used to be the one she looked at like that. There was no anger in his voice, only something deeper. Sadness. Resignation. A man holding a truth he didn't want, but couldn't ignore anymore. Then he looked at her. You made your choice tonight. Don't pretend this wasn't it. She looked down. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I didn't want to hurt you. But you did. And just like that, he walked out. No yelling. No drama. Just the sound of the front door opening and closing behind him. We stood there in the quiet aftershock, the room still filled with the heat of what almost happened. My hands were trembling. Hers, too. I should have left. But I didn't. Instead, I reached for her. Because right or wrong, that moment, it wasn't done with us yet. I didn't expect her to take my hand. But she did, slowly, deliberately, like every nerve in her body had been waiting for this. There was no sound in the room except the ticking of the wall clock and the low hum of the wine fridge. The candle had burned down to its final flicker. The silence wasn't awkward. It was loaded. A pause between heartbeats. I don't remember walking her to the couch. I just remember the way she looked at me. Not with guilt, not with fear, but with hunger she'd been hiding for too long. When I sat down, she followed, close enough that her thigh brushed mine. Her skin was warm, and when she turned toward me, I could feel her breath against my cheek. Shallow. Shaken. This isn't who I thought I'd become, she said softly. But right now, I don't care. Her voice cracked on that last word, and something in me cracked too. I cupped her face, slowly, like I was asking a question without words. She didn't pull away. Her eyes closed, and for a moment we just breathed, like if we moved too fast, everything might fall apart. When our lips finally met, it wasn't fireworks. It was something quieter, more dangerous. It was years of unsaid things, all bleeding into a single moment that shouldn't have existed, but did. Her body leaned into mine like gravity was stronger now, like the space between us had never really belonged to us. Her fingers found the back of my neck, and I swear I felt every nerve in my spine light up. Nothing about it was rushed. It was slow, aching, like we were memorizing what it felt like to break a promise and love the taste of it. I wasn't thinking about Ben. I wasn't thinking about what came next. I was only thinking about her, and the fact that her hands were trembling against my skin like she'd waited forever to touch me like this. And when we finally let go of restraint, it wasn't lust. It was a kind of need that had been whispering between us for years. And now, it was finally speaking out loud. I woke up before she did. The room was filled with that strange, heavy quiet that only follows a night where something irreversible has happened. I sat on the edge of the bed, their bed, staring at the light leaking through the blinds, trying to make sense of the choices that had brought me here. Her arm was still draped across the pillow where I'd been. Her breathing was slow, peaceful, like part of her had finally stopped running from whatever it was we'd both been circling for so long. But me? I wasn't peaceful. I was on fire. Not with regret. That would come later, maybe. What I felt then was something more raw, more electric. Like I'd crossed a line I never truly wanted to return from. I got up quietly, pulling on my shirt like it might shield me from the weight of the morning. My fingers still remembered the feel of her spine beneath them. My lips still remembered the way she gasped when I whispered her name in the dark. I made my way to the kitchen, half expecting Ben to be there. But he wasn't. His car was gone. No note. Just silence. I poured myself a glass of water, hands shaking slightly, and stared out the window at the empty driveway. When I heard footsteps behind me, I didn't turn right away. Her voice found me first. You left before I could say anything. I turned. She was wrapped in one of Ben's old t-shirts, bare legs, messy hair, eyes still thick with sleep, and something else, something like fear, but not quite. What is there to say? I asked. She looked down. That I meant it. All of it. Last night it wasn't a mistake. I wanted to believe her. God, I did. But everything felt fragile. Like one wrong word would send the whole thing crashing down. What about Ben? I asked. Where is he? She leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. He left early. Said he needed space. Said he'd call when he was ready. I nodded, unsure of what any of it meant. Then she walked up to me, slow, deliberate, and placed her hand on my chest, right over my heartbeat. Do you regret it? I didn't answer right away, because the truth was complicated. What we did wasn't clean, or easy, or fair. But regret? No, not even for a second. Days passed. We didn't talk about it, not really. But we didn't stop either. I'd come over late, always after dark. Her texts were short, but they said everything: he's not home, or I need you tonight. And I'd go, every time, because something about it felt inevitable. It wasn't just about the heat, though there was plenty of that. It was about the way she looked at me like I was the first breath after being underwater too long. The way her body softened in my hands like she'd forgotten how to be touched that gently. But with every visit, a clock was ticking louder in the background. We never talked about Ben. Not when we were wrapped in sheets. Not when she was tracing circles on my chest with her fingertips. Not even when we heard a car in the distance and froze like guilt was standing outside the door. One night, she sat across from me on the floor, our backs against the couch, a half-empty bottle of wine between us. Her knees were drawn to her chest. She looked like a confession she wasn't ready to say out loud. I used to dream about running away, she said. I looked at her. Why didn't you? She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Because I wanted someone to chase me. To tell me I didn't have to run alone. I didn't say anything. Just reached for her hand. Held it. And felt the way she squeezed back like that was the answer she'd been waiting for. But that night, something shifted. When I left, I saw Ben's car parked a block away. Engine off. Lights out. Just sitting there. Watching. He didn't stop me. He didn't come to the door. But I knew. And he knew I knew. And whatever fragile line we'd all been pretending hadn't been crossed. It was gone. Burned away. The next time I saw Ben, he wasn't parked down the street. He was on my front porch. It was a Wednesday. Late. I'd just gotten out of the shower when I heard the knock. My stomach dropped the moment I opened the door and saw him standing there. Arms crossed. Face unreadable. I didn't invite him in. He didn't ask. We stood in silence for a few long seconds before he finally spoke. I'm not here to fight. I nodded slowly, but didn't move from the doorway. Then why are you here? He looked past me, like the hallway behind me might offer him an answer. She still loves me, he said. But it's not the same. I can feel it every time she touches me, like she's reaching for someone else in her head. I swallowed hard. Then why stay? He looked down, shook his head. Because I thought maybe it was just a phase. A fantasy. That she'd snap out of it. And now, he looked up, and for the first time, he didn't look like the perfect husband. He looked like a man who'd lost something he hadn't realized he was losing until it was already gone. Now I think she's already gone, he said quietly. I just wanted to hear it out loud. I didn't know what to say. Every part of me was wired for guilt and defiance, tangled into a knot I couldn't untie. Ben turned to leave, but before he did, he added one last thing. She's not the villain here. Neither are you. But whatever this is, you should be damn sure it's real before you destroy what's left of her. Then he left. No drama. No fists. Just truth, dropped like a stone in water, rippling out into everything. That night, I didn't text her, and she didn't text me. But the silence between us was louder than ever. And somehow, it felt like we were finally standing at the edge of whatever this thing between us really was. No more pretending. No more hiding. Just one final decision waiting to be made. She showed up at my door just after midnight. No call. No warning. Just the soft knock I'd come to know too well, the kind that always carried more than it let on. She looked like she hadn't slept. No makeup. Hair tied up in that loose, messy way that always undid me. And her eyes, they didn't sparkle. They burned. I stepped aside without a word. She walked in like she belonged there, but for the first time, she didn't touch me. Didn't reach. Just stood in the center of the room like she was bracing for impact. I told him, she said. My throat tightened. All of it. She nodded. Everything. What I felt. What we did. What I wanted. And what do you want? I asked carefully. She didn't answer right away. Just walked to the window, arms crossed, staring out into the quiet street. Then she turned back to me. I want something real, she said. Not perfect. Not safe. Just real. My heart was pounding, not from fear, but from how badly I'd wanted her to say that. How long I'd been waiting to hear it. And how terrifying it was to finally get it. But, she added, voice lower now, real things cost something. And I need to be ready to pay for it. Not just rush into the next version of a mistake. I stepped toward her, slow, deliberate. I'm not a mistake, I said. But I'm also not a cure. She nodded, eyes glistening. I know. There was a pause. Then she reached for my hand. Just that. No kiss. No promises. Just the warmth of skin and everything it carried. We stood like that for a long time. Not lovers. Not strangers. Something in between. The place where something ends and something else begins. And maybe that's the real story. Not the night she asked me to stay, but the morning we stopped pretending we were innocent and finally started choosing who we really were. Together or not. Still undecided. Still unfinished. But finally honest.